Okay, someone asked about how to create puddle reflections and liquid. So I'm going to walk you through this file, and I'll upload this Photoshop file to Canvas so you guys can see what I did. But to create puddle reflections, you just need to understand what is happening in real life and then try to recreate that. So what I did is I cut out this spaceman and dropped him in here. So I just cut this guy out, and I already have this is on my Rocket Man layer here. So I cut out this spaceman right here, cut him out with a mask, and then drug him in here. And so I have him already cut out. You guys know how to do that with the quick selection tool or the color selection tool or color range or mask tools. So I drug him in. Then what I did was I made a copy of him. Oops, let's not make a copy of that layer right there. I have a blue layer on top just to give the photo some mood and some feeling. I'm going to turn that off right there, and then I'm going to turn off this puddle layer here for a second. Okay, so now what I have here is this spaceman, and I made a copy of him, made a copy of the new layer, and you can see I have him on this mask here. I'm going to bring him to the front. Then what I did is I flipped him over. So I started shrinking him down, but if you press Option, it shrinks from the middle. If you press Command, it will flip over the top. It'll kind of reflect, I guess you could say, and it'll reflect in all sorts of different ways. So that's what I did. I reflected him, so it starts to create that reflection of what we'd be seeing. We'd be seeing that flip opposite mirror image. Then I moved him over and dropped him down in there, and then created a mask over the top. Okay. So I dropped him in there. I'm going to confirm that change. So then what I did is I dropped him in here, and then I have a mask over the top of this right here. So what I did was I created. You can see I have this layer copy right here of the background layer. So I have the background layer right here, and then I created a layer over the top, and I masked out. You can see this. I basically made a hole where this puddle is, so I can actually move this guy anywhere I want, and he moves within that puddle, and you can still see those reflections because he's just in a mask there. I'm going to put him out right there. I could bring him back in the screen if I want, right there. If I shift click this mask, I can turn off that, or no, sorry, this one right here. I can turn off that that mask, and then I see that's just going right over the top. Or if I do this, so you can see what is masked. If I turn off that whole layer, I just kind of masked that right here. So I have this whole layer right there, and then the mask properties. If I click in this mask properties, there you go. You can see it's the original background layer, but I brought it to the front, and then I opened up kind of this hole so that I can move my object around a little bit. I should mask off right that tiny bit right there. And the same thing for this guy up here. I can move him around a little bit. I just masked him right there. So I have that now, that layer copy. If I move this layer around, you guys can see what I'm talking about. Oops, that's the background. Here's the foreground. See that hole I created right there? So I just masked off the top layer so that I can move this guy around in the puddle. Move that back. Okay. Then the next real thing I did to make this settle in here is I had this originally at 100% when I masked this, and that started to look better, but it doesn't look real because puddle reflections typically aren't that bright and vivid. So I started to knock the opacity down, and when you do that, you get some of these little ripples of the puddle, and it actually creates a much more realistic reflection. You can make it really, really opaque, so you probably want to see that a little bit more. Maybe somewhere right in here. You can just see the reflection, but you can still see these little puddle ripples right here, some of the water. That's really nice and natural. Okay, so that's how I did that. Just masked this off, flipped it, and then created a mask over the top, and then flipped or knocked down the opacity of this layer. Okay, then somebody asked about creating liquid. So I created liquid in a couple of different ways. The first way is I used our other program that we know, Adobe Illustrator. So I created this this little liquid kind of drips right here. Very kind of cartoony, not very realistic, but you could take some time and make it realistic. So I brought this in. Let's see, I'll just show you that process. I copied this, and then I'll paste this over here, Command V. I'm going to bring it, I brought it in as a smart object, so that way it still retains its quality at any size, and then press enter, and it's in there. Okay, so I already have it in there. If this happens to you and you're waiting for libraries, it's trying to sync your Adobe accounts, you can just click stop and it'll stop. Okay, if you're on your own computer, it might sync those libraries if you're signed in with all those programs and make this available in libraries for you. Libraries right there. I don't want to do that. I'll just copy and paste. So I'm going to delete that layer. I already have it here. Then I did a couple of things. I applied some effects, some FX right here. I applied bevel and emboss and inner shadow. So it came in like this. I applied a bevel and emboss and an inner shadow. So if I double click on this layer, I can see if you click on bevel and emboss, I just kind of created a little bevel for this to create somewhat of a shadow on this, and I control the depth right here. You can see it just making subtle effects and changes. I think if I change this, yeah, if I change the angle of where the bevel is, which is my shadow, it'll change and show you those things. So go through these and change what's happening. This is the structure of your bevel, and this is the shading, how it handles that shading. Play around with these settings, and it'll help create slight shadows or highlights for you. Then I actually selected the inner shadow just because I wanted something on the inside of my shape. I don't want a shadow. I could have done an inner glow, but I did an inner shadow, and then I just changed my shadow color from dark to light to make it an inner highlight, because the inner part will bring it inside here. Inner glow would work just fine too. And then I changed the angle right here of that inner, that highlight right there, and then change the distance. If I bring it out really far, it does this. I just made it really subtle. Okay, so mess around with those changes. Those will apply effects to those objects. You could have a color overlay if you want to change the color on things. Click this box to activate, and then click in here to change that color. Let's actually do that. Let's change the overlay, and let's match this a little more to the photo. And there we go. Make it just a little darker, I guess. So you can see what it looks like here, before, after. Just a little darker. That's fine. I'll take it off there. I don't like it. Okay. Then what I did was I finished it off, and I created another layer. I lassoed the selection of this puddle right here, and I copy and paste. Let's zoom in on this here. Okay. So I lassoed this selection, and then I just used my clone stamp, and I copied and pasted in here, and then I masked off all these edges, and I brought back some of these edges right here. Oops, with my mask. So I have my mask. I could kind of bring back. Let's see, is this layer? Yeah. Okay, good. So I could reveal this edge just a little bit if I wanted to reveal that edge. I have this mask on opacity right here. I just kind of want to reveal a few edges, not a ton, to give this a really nice liquid feel. I'll bring this back just a little bit more, okay, to make it really look like it's spilling over. But it gives it a little bit of a liquid type feel. Now this liquid is not actually going on the angle of the street, so that's kind of messing with it a little bit. I suppose I could group those things with Command G, and I could use the same principle we used for our astronaut, and kind of tweak and warp this. So this was kind of floating down right here, and make this float right there. That'd be kind of nice. And then you could go in and you could use the liquefy tool to then bend this just a little bit more to make it look like it was a little more real. I mean, these drips do look cartoony, so you're only going to go so far. It just takes some time, but that's the basic principle. I use the Illustrator shape as my shape, kind of my guide, and then I copied and pasted, or I clone stamped the water texture to keep that water texture in there. Okay, you can mask that off in that little hole, it wouldn't go there, and there you go. Now I have my rectangle just to give it a little mood, and that's how you create a reflection by masking a layer, creating a reflection for a puddle, drop the opacity, and then add some liquid effects there.